everybody. Welcome to Terror Talk. It's a horrifying day.
It is, and it's the season.
Oh, so good. Fall is so good.
Fall is so good to us.
Right? Today on the show, we're going to talk about two big movies that we've watched recently that we wanted to discuss, Longlegs and Oddity. And I believe we are going to start with Longlegs.
God bless Osgood Perkins. That's all I have to say. So Nicolas Cage stars as the title character in Longlegs. He is a devil worshiper who has orchestrated the murders of entire families and has eluded authorities for more than 30 years. Authorities get a break in their search for Longlegs when FBI Special Agent Lee Harker, played by Maika Monroe, who's awesome in this.
She's so good.
Joins the case. Lee is an expert symbologist who has decoded the cryptic letters the killer leaves at every one of his crime scenes. I loved this movie, and I don't think that I have felt this scared in a theater in quite a long time.
Yeah, this movie is getting great press, great reviews, good audience numbers, and I absolutely enjoyed it as well. I can completely understand. I mean, some people are like, oh, this is the best horror film of the decade. I think those are big words, but I certainly know it's going to be top 10 for the year for me.
Yeah, and I think what people are reacting to too is just the visceral response and how pleased we feel, because horror these days is really hard to do it's not hard to do as far as it being a good movie, but it's harder to scare our audiences now.
Oh, absolutely.
And they did it. I mean, Nick Cage was unrecognizable, and his performance, this is where I was saying to the people that I went with, this is why horror needs to be back in like Academy Award winning genres, because his performance was knockout.
We're all used to crazy Nick Cage, right? But what I noticed was that, yes, he was very, very odd and mentally ill in this movie. However, I think partly because he had some disguise to his appearance, that helped. But he was doing something different. Like, this was a different crazy Nick Cage.
So it wasn't just like the quacky kind of like gimmicky Cage.
He got to do something different, but similar. So it's like, oh, everybody wants to show up for Nick Cage as a weirdo, right? But this was not his average weirdo stuff. This was like God tier Nick Cage. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was. And we're used to the Nick Cage that is kind of even funny with his creepiness. You know, when we look at Renfield, right? Good example of Nick Cage being Nick Cage just as a vampire. This was a very different performance.
It was. I feel like it was inspired by Tiny Tim.
Oh my God. You're so right. But you know, when you're watching this, my partner kept saying the whole time, I kept telling myself, this is only Nick Cage. This is only Nick Cage. And the reason why I share that bit is because a lot of times when we watch him, we're like, oh, it's Nick Cage.
Yep.
You had to remember to not freak yourself out.
You had to remember, he was so different, which was really nice. He really embodied something different, which I really appreciate, because I know he values his acting chops, and he hasn't exactly appreciated becoming kind of a meme in the last 10 to 15 years. But he continues to knock out great performances. Like, I really loved him in that movie Pig. I thought it was really, really good. And the interesting thing about this movie too is that I don't think this movie to me is not terrifying or gruesome in an average way or an overt way. It's really about the atmosphere.
Oh.
Both of these movies today are really about atmosphere and how important atmosphere is to you feeling scared. Not for the imagery to be scary, but for you to internally feel tension and fear. And atmosphere is key. And it's like this really cool 90s throwback retro look.
Well, yeah, and I don't think
this film.
It should be lost on anybody that the director of the film is Psycho's son. You know, Norman Bates' son. I read and I think you did too, Shannon. There's a great article in Fangoria between Oz and Nick, and how they talk about their early influences being their own mothers.
Yeah.
And being in an industry where both of these kids grew up around horror. And then, you know, Nick Cage's uncle is Coppola. So they both talked about the culture of sort of how they got to this project together. It's a really great article. But Oz Perkins, I think he really brought this atmosphere to life, and that Nick Cage was a supplemental piece, but he certainly wasn't the center as far as what made the movie good. Because sometimes you'll watch movies like this and you'll be like, well, Nick Cage was really good in it. But the movie, Maika Monroe's character as the FBI agent who's kind of on the spectrum and is brilliant. And then you also learn about her past and how she's developed into this persona based on her own childhood and the pieces that are kind of connected to Longlegs. I thought the storyline was good. I thought the atmosphere, the cinematography was great, and it was eerie. There were large moments of silence.
That was one of the things I was going to mention, is that I always really love when filmmakers use silence. That is such an important part of horror, and I know that we've done episodes about how horror scares us, and I'm sure we probably mentioned sound. I know we did. And one of the things is that silence is so important, and this movie uses silence very, very effectively. He uses a lot of gimmicks, what we would call gimmicks, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. No. I mean, there are ways that horror movies and movies in general get at our feels, and this is one of the styles, is to have these, a variety of shots and silence. And I thought that the story was very straightforward, and so you as a viewer, if you haven't seen it yet, I think what you'll experience is you won't be confused necessarily. In the beginning, there are images that you don't understand, but I don't think they confuse you. No. You get an atmosphere, you get a feeling, because the story is straightforward. It isn't like weird. No,
and the stuff that you're trying to put together at the beginning that might not be explained right away is not in an effort to be like, this is a human Rorschach, and I want you to interpret it. And it's this deep, meta horror. It's just, it answers itself later.
Yeah, just like with any good movie, you just have to have that. Yep. You have to have patience, viewer.
Going back to the concept of silence when it's used correctly too is, and Shannon, you and I can speak on this being clinicians, is that what silence does is it puts someone in their own head, right? And when you're watching horror, it's a very effective tool at creating your own horror in your mind of what you think is going to happen next, or it isn't spelled out for you. It gives credit to the audience. It does all of these really profound things that in a movie like this was super effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I imagine it'll be probably top 10 for both of us for the year.
Easily.
There are so many great movies. The other thing I thought that was great about this movie, or that was interesting, is I feel like they did, the trope of Satan or demons or evil or what have you is obviously very well played. Like, it's well done. It's done a lot, and it's in a lot of movies, and sometimes it lands and sometimes it doesn't. And I thought they did some unique things along the way. In other words, the story is straightforward, but he was able to put some unique things in the script that are familiar enough, but they're unique, like calling the devil Mr. Downstairs. Like, I've never heard that before. Like, those are cool. There's little bits of business along the way that feel like that they don't feel overdone. But then there are other things that are so familiar that you feel safe in the movie.
Yeah.
You want to blend, right? You want a blend of like, okay, we're following the rules of horror. And then some overlay of some uniqueness and some stylization and cool atmosphere. And it was a frightening movie. Longlegs. Do we know why it's called Longlegs? I saw one review that said his legs weren't even that long.
Yeah. Although when they shoot him, though, he is... I
was thinking it's from the kid's perspective.
Yeah, but when they shoot him at the beginning and the camera pans all the way up, that it was her first memory of how she remembers him.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I have not done, purposely not looked it up or looked at any like fan hysteria about it. I do know that some people don't know why, but that was me, is that we are intentionally supposed to be looking at a lot of this through this child's perspective.
Right.
even though that's not overt in the story. But there are these opening scenes and things where she sees Nick Cage's character for the first time, and he has these incredibly skinny long legs.
And white pants.
But not in a sci-fi way.
No.
Just
not
he's
like
tall.
the Thin Man. Yeah.
He's just tall and she's a kid.
Yeah.
And so when we're kids, we're like big nose or this, that, or the other, like the old man. We just characterize people by how they look.
Yeah, and I think that memory sticks with the person. So as they get older, they might say, "I just remember him having these long white legs," right? Because she's down there. So and that's where like that camera intentionally does that pan, because when he first comes on screen, you don't see his face first. It's very strategic. You see his feet and then his legs and then his torso, and then my God, that comes after. Oh my God, fucking Tiny Tim mixed with powder. Remember that movie?
I do. That crazy movie. And I wanted to talk about a movie that actually Kathy hasn't seen yet, but I'm going to talk about it and hopefully she will. So this movie is called Oddity, and it's 2024, and it's by Damian McCarthy, and this is his sophomore effort. You guys might remember watching a movie called Caveat. It's a great little horror movie if you haven't seen it. It's an indie movie. It was well received, but also an indie horror film. So, and then you wonder, okay, somebody's sophomore effort, what's that going to be like? Sophomore efforts are notoriously, maybe not. But what happened is, I believe, Caveat got some good reviews and play and established him and like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. So let's give him some actual money. So I believe Shudder gave him some actual money to go out and make this movie called Oddity. Mm-hmm. Let me say just the basic premise. There are these twin sisters, and one of them has been murdered. Now, the murdered twin sister is married to this guy who's a psychiatrist, I believe, in a mental health facility where people go when they're severely mentally ill. And you learn this within the first 5 or 10 minutes. So none of these things are spoilers. Now, that woman dies. One of the twin sisters dies, and that was his person. And then his dead wife's twin sister is a big part of this movie. Now, the actress Carolyn Bracken, who plays both sisters, because the way this story is structured, I like this way to structure a story. I don't think it's an easy way, but I do think it was successful in this movie, where you're kind of going a little bit back and forth in time. So you do see her playing both sisters, and that is important to how the story unfolds. So after her sister is murdered in their home, he's still living there, and this twin sister who's still alive wants to go after those responsible by using haunted items as her tools for revenge. So I want to stop for just a second and say that this is a movie that blends genres, in my opinion. Nobody's really talking about how this is a folk horror movie, because there's sci-fi, but there's also realistic horror in this movie. So it's a real blend of realistic horror and some sci-fi elements, but the sci-fi elements are very much the folk horror piece, right? Where there's sort of an ancient occultness to it. Mm-hmm. There's an unknownness to it, which are both in folk horror. There's an isolation to it. They are very isolated in this house. Almost the whole movie takes place either in the psych hospital or in this house. That's a crucial factor. It's a rural setting. It's an Irish movie, so it's a rural setting in Ireland.
I'm looking at some photos from it.
And it's very, very, as folk horror is, unsettling.
Well, there's this creepy doll.
So let me get to that. Okay, so horror films often have something hidden, right? Where you don't know what's haunting them. You don't know what's happening. It's like the sounds from the closet and the serial killer around the corner and the slasher hiding behind the curtain and all of this. And that's scary, right? You're waiting for the other thing to drop, and there's jump scares and you're terrified and all the things. This is a movie where what we are afraid of is right in front of us almost the whole time. And it's this gigantic wooden fucking mannequin that's shaped like a man. And you'll see it in the pictures.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's disturbing.
It's a wooden man mannequin. And it's there like almost the whole time. It's not there in the beginning. So this movie takes a bit of time to create the atmosphere and warm up. So if you don't have any patience at all, don't watch the movie. But this is a really good movie, by the way. 30 minutes in, when the horror starts to kick in halfway through, it kicks in. So trust me on that. They go somewhere, all the things. But the amount of tension... I was afraid. There's a few moments in this where I actually felt, and Kathy talked about this with the last movie, it is so rare to actually feel dread and fright in your gut when you're watching something. It is so rare, even especially for horror fans, because we're so
We've
desensitized.
seen everything. Yeah,
we're so desensitized. But this thing, it's so crazy that you could see what you're scared of the whole time. But talk about silence. I mean, it's a wooden mannequin, for Christ's sake. It's silent. The performances are great. She plays both twin sisters great. The guy that plays the husband is really interesting and great. And then there are twists and turns. This is, some people like jump scares, some people like tone and feel, some people like imagery. We're all over the place with what we like, but I think this has it all. In other words, it has jump scares, but these are not empty jump scares. These are jump scares that go somewhere. Yeah. They're very effective. You are so afraid and feeling in dread that when the jump scare comes and it's effective and there's always follow through, it's not just like the cat that jumped off the window and and it scared you and you thought it was something else. It's not that. They're real. The jump scares are real. Please, if you watch it, enjoy the performances, enjoy that creepy atmosphere. The pacing I thought was really great, even though it takes a while to get going, but I don't see how you don't take time to create that atmosphere, because, in this kind of story where we're shown events and then we think we know what happened and then it's not what happened. So that's that back and forth time, and that can be done so poorly. But this is one of those ones where there's this fucking wooden mannequin. There's this trauma around the sister being murdered in the home, and what actually happened and what we think happened and what didn't happen and all of that. There's the fact that he works in a psychiatric hospital. So there's stuff going on with that. And then there's this creepy ass twin sister that's playing into the folk horror part of it, where she's come for retribution and blames the husband and all of this. And so then what ends up happening with her and what she ends up doing. So there's a lot of cool elements to this that if you like just straightforward horror with great atmosphere and scares, you're going to like it. If you like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, based on what I'm looking at here while you're talking, is it's like in the top 5. The reviews are like,
oh, top 5.
Yeah. Like people are just like, this is one of the best things you'll see.
Awesome. Yeah. And they're saying that about Longlegs too.
Perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh my gosh. And it's interesting because they're talking about it as a sci-fi horror, which I get, and that makes sense to me. But I would also say that this is a really cool contemporary mix of genres where, and the Irish often add in some folk horror because you have the landscape there, you have total isolation and these isolative issues that are going on. You have sort of these skewed moral beliefs about what happened because you have this twin sister that has all these witchy vibes and this weird mannequin and all of this. And then folk horror has to have a happening or a summoning, right? Mm-hmm. Where you summon something from the old days or the old religions or whatever. This one's more of a happening or something. She's making something happen. And it's really fucking cool.
Yeah, like she's inviting it by bringing these. Yeah, it's not happening to her.
Exactly. They're not like, she's not, there's this wooden mannequin. So you got to find out what that's all about, guys.
I'm down. I'm looking at this as you're talking about it. I'm like, I think I might be sold.
Yeah, I mean, if you've, this will be in my top 10 for the year. if not top 5. I have no idea. We're so early. We have the whole fall season to go. There's already been some great movies this year, but Oddity is certainly on my list.
Cool. No, it looks really good.
And Longlegs was great. I had heard that as a recommendation from Kathy, and among others, like, it was getting so much buzz. And so I was pretty excited about that one. Are there movies coming this fall? I mean, I can say a few, but that you're really looking forward to?
I mentioned one on our, it's funny you say that because I was just looking back at my notes here. I mentioned one on our Shrink Chat show, which is The Man in the White Van.
Oh, I've read a little bit about that.
And I'm also obviously looking forward to the new Terrifier and the new Scream. I haven't done a deep dive into like some of the smaller titles, which I want to do. But, this is a time of year where we see some of the Shudder exclusives and things like that don't go to the theater, that really, we get some good movies.
You bet. I know that it's very controversial to want to see the new Crow, and I know that it's out already, and it was out in August and all of that, and I haven't seen it yet, but I do want to see it. I saw the trailer in the movie theater when I went to see Alien Romulus, which we are going to do a mini cast on.
We are.
And there are so many movies that I want to see coming up. I also want to see the new Beetlejuice.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I don't know if you know this, Shannon. I was talking, I went to see Romulus last night, and my friend was like, we all need to go because, but we all need to go. There is a Beetlejuice bar in Los Angeles.
Yeah, there's an event that's going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm like, that might have to precede this movie, because how fun of a night would that be?
This season, there's going to be that Beetlejuice happening in LA. There's like an event of whatever kind for Beetlejuice. I am looking forward to Terrifier 3.
Yes.
Don't know if I could say I'm looking forward to it, but I'm very curious about it to see what's up. And then there's a lot of other smaller movies that I'm looking forward to, but we'll talk about those along the way. I was really looking forward to Oddity. Oh, and I'm also looking forward to Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna watch that in our Discord for sure together, because they decided to make it go, straight to streaming as well as be in the theater, I think.
Let me ask you a question though.
Yeah.
This is not the one that they were working on like 4 years ago, right?
I don't know.
Because there was one that was supposed to come out in 22, then it was supposed to come out in 23, and I don't know if this is the same one, but I still love the OG. I know we talked about that one not that long ago on the show, and that one still freaks me out.
Yeah, this one's got similar vibes to it. I think they're trying to honor it, and I know that Stephen King has come out and said he likes it or whatever, and cool. I know that he can be kind of course, judgmental about his own work, sure, which makes sense to me. It was initially meant to be released in 2022. I'm just reading it now.
Oh, then that's it.
Yeah, and after a 2023 date was cruelly snatched away, I imagine something else replaced it, and now it's also going to streaming. So I don't know what they're doing with it, but I do know that it is coming out finally. Oh, and Smile 2.
Yeah. I don't know that they need another one.
I don't know either, man.
I've seen the preview now a couple of times since going to see some of these newer movies. And every time it comes up, I turn to my friend and I was like, she's like, I'm like, I don't know if they needed a second one.
Something about it, you know? But I mean, when a movie grosses as much as that one did, I guess you gotta.
I guess so.
The money bags are like, oh. There's also a movie called Heretic that's coming out actually in November with Hugh Grant. That's A24 that I'm looking forward to. And then in December, the movie Night Bitch is coming out.
Oh, I don't know if I know that one.
It's this book that's very Kafkaesque. I don't know that you would like it. Okay. I certainly couldn't put up with it. But Rachel Yoder's novel was Night Bitch, and I bought that book like so faster than I've ever bought a book, because I just thought, oh, holy shit, da da da. So it's comedic and horrifying and all of that, but if you've ever read Kafka, it's got kind of narrative, and I just couldn't do it.
I gotcha.
It's about a woman who pauses her career to be a stay-at-home mother, and this movie is going to star Amy Adams. And so I imagine that this movie is going to be better than the book.
She's great.
Yeah. And it was adapted with Adams in mind. She's also producing this, I guess. And Night Bitch. So what does that conjure? That conjures werewolves, doesn't it?
Night Bitch? Uh-huh. Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
You know, you'll have to see.
Okay.
Being Kafka, it's not very straightforward. But the cover of the book is red with big slabs of meat on it. So...
Well, yeah, that would add up.
So that's coming out in December, as is Nosferatu. But
that's the other one I'm excited for.
we have a lot of months between now and then, but that's supposed to be a Christmas release.
Well, Nosferatu, it's perfect, I think, for Christmas because it's a gothic horror and it's dark and it's cold.
I do too. I think it's amazing. And I hope that you guys come back. In a few weeks, we're doing an episode on the goth horror of the 90s, basically like Matrix, Blade, Underworld, etc. We like goth, and with The Crow coming out, just kind of seemed on topic. So we hope you come back for that. We really appreciate you. And we also hope that you've seen these 2 movies or you go see them now with our recommendation. This has been an episode of Terror Talk. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Kathy. Sleep safe, everyone.